Good morning. Today I'm going to be talking to you about religion and academic success. And I worked to discover if there's a correlation between the two. And I wanted to share my findings with you today. So first, when I was tasked with coming up with a research project about something that has never been studied before, I was a bit lost. I thought, everything has been studied. What am I going to come up with? But I knew I had interest in the social sciences, and so I decided maybe I should focus on cultural aspects or something along those lines, but what really stood out to me was religion. At first, I was thinking maybe I should talk about how people of different religions interact with each other, not only within their own religion, but with people of different religions than them. But I also realized that our local area is not very religiously diverse. The most diversity we have is within the Christian religion itself and the denominations within that religion. So that's what I decided to focus on. Rather than finding out the differences between different religions, I chose one religion and focused on the denominations within it. So I had to select three main focus denominations for myself. So I chose the Catholic, Jehovah's Witness, and Evangelical Protestant denominations. I chose the Catholic denomination for two main reasons. The first one was the concept of Catholic guilt. It has been found that Catholic guilt can lead to a perfectionist attitude. You want to have a clean conscience. You want to do everything the way that you are told to do it. And I thought, well, if Catholics carry themselves in a manner in which they feel that they cannot fail or stray from the status quo, then perhaps they take this sort of identity and perspective into their academics. And then the next reason I decided to focus on the Catholic denomination was because of the former Pope's apostolic constitution. So in this constitution, he gave a speech and he shared guidelines for Catholic higher education institutions. And he shared with them that what they should do to look at the secular, non-religious world's problems, such as the environmental crisis. However, he didn't give any guidelines for secular institutions or Catholic students that attend non-religious colleges. So it made me think, is there some sort of stigma around secular education within the Catholic denomination, or is it just not a preference? Next, the Jehovah's Witness denomination. As I was going through different Christian denominations, I was looking for, do they support secular education, higher education at all? And I couldn't really find a clear stance for any of the denominations, but I did find one for Jehovah's Witnesses. On the Jehovah's Witness website, they shared that they find secular institutions can cause moral and spiritual dangers. And so they might influence their Jehovah's Witness younger generations to stray from a secular educational institution. And I wondered if that negative stigma could perhaps impact the academic success of those Jehovah's Witness students. Also, the population of Jehovah's Witnesses, according to a 2014 Pew Research study, is less than 1% in the United States. So because they are such a minority population, there isn't a lot of academic literature done on this group of people. Thus, it needs to be done and they need to be included in the conversation. And lastly, I decided to study Evangelical Protestant. Evangelical Protestant is not a denomination itself, but rather a religious tradition. It is a group of 40 different denominations. I chose to do this tradition rather than a specific Protestant denomination because the entire tradition itself makes up a quarter of the entire United States population. So I'd have a variety of views of people to pull from and a larger population to sample from. Also, evangelical Protestants have a history of promoting education. There were missionaries in Africa that were said to have a unique role in spreading mass education. So I thought perhaps this history of supporting education could influence the academic achievement of evangelical Protestant students. So now, this leads me to the gap in research question. As I was going through academic literature, educational studies, religious studies, I found that there isn't really a crossover between the two, where one might influence the other. And I didn't know why this is, because we use religion for every aspect of our lives, so why would education be any different? So I came up with a research question. Is there a correlation between membership in the Jehovah's Witness, Catholic, and evangelical Protestant denominations and academic achievement in post-secondary secular education? So a couple definitions I want to share with you guys before we get into the project itself is secular. This means that it's just not religious, non-religious. Simple definition. Next, post-secondary education. This is education past the secondary level, which is your high school. So this includes trade schools, colleges, universities, etc. And lastly, denomination, which is what I will be focusing on today. And this is a religious organization whose congregations are united in their adherence to its beliefs and practices according to Merriam-Webster. Before I was able to conduct my own research experiment, I had to review the current conversation around religion and education and where they come together. So I had to look up what is already known about the connection between religion and education. What I found in academic studies is that there are two main factors that contribute to academic success. The first one being strong self-efficacy, which is basically a person's self-confidence that they have that they can achieve their academic goals. Any goals that they set for themselves, they have the skills to achieve them, and if they don't have those skills yet, they have the ability to work towards getting those skills. And next, positive implicit theories. There are two implicit theories on intelligence: incremental, or a growth mindset, and entity, or a fixed mindset. The growth mindset is where you believe that intelligence changes over time. As you have more experience, as you develop more skills, your intelligence is increasing. Where a fixed mindset is, I've always been the same academically performing. I'm never going to be smart. I'm always stuck at the same level of intelligence as I have my whole life. So, academic studies have found that a strong self-efficacy and positive implicit theories, the growth mindset, contributes to academic success. So having self-confidence and the belief that your intelligence can change over time leads you to being more academically successful. So how does this relate to education? One way that we can connect self-efficacy and religion together is in the conversation of religious trauma. A 2023 study found that self-efficacy is a factor that contributes to religious trauma, along with stunted development, abuse of power, and deficits in critical thinking skills. So, now coming into my personal project. I conducted two different research methods, the first being surveys, and the second being interviews. So the surveys contained a specific respondent criteria. They had to be members of any one of the three denominations, Jehovah's Witnesses, Catholics, or evangelical Protestants. They had to be in current attendance of a secular educational institution. And they had to be above the age of 18. The survey contained questions about their faith, questions that measured their levels of self-efficacy, questions about if they believe in intelligence being able to change over time, or if they have a fixed mindset, questions that measured the views on secular education, if they're for it or against it, if their family has influenced them towards it or against it, and questions that measured their GPA ranges. These surveys were distributed through messages. I reached out to college students that I know, and I gave it to them, asked them to take it, and I asked them to share it with the people that they knew fit the criteria to also answer this. The next method was interviews. These contained 2 respondents per denomination. One of the respondents was a high school student. Most of them were seniors. And then the other respondent was above college age. So I was able to get multi-generational perspectives and views on academic success and secular education. I also asked them questions about their faith, their views on secular higher education, questions if they were aware of any stigma within their denomination around secular education, questions that measured their self-efficacy, and again, questions that measured if they have a growth or a fixed mindset. I personally interviewed every member either digitally or in person. I also sent them a list of the questions that they would be interviewed before, so if they had any problems with it, if they felt anything was too personal that they didn't want to answer, they could let me know beforehand. So the results of my findings. So for my surveys, out of all of the denominations, I didn't get any Jehovah's Witnesses to respond. I had called a local meeting place twice and left messages. They didn't respond to me. And so I only had evangelical, Protestant, and Catholic respondents for my survey. So it was almost split down the middle between the two denominations. 60% of my respondents were evangelical Protestant, 40% were Catholic. Within those two denominations, 100% of them had positive self-efficacy. So there are no quantitative differences between levels of self-efficacy between the two denominations. Similarly, 100% of the respondents between both denominations had a growth mindset. So every single respondent believes that their intelligence can change over time. Then I looked at academic success. The first thing I looked at was their GPAs. So within the Catholic denomination, 20% of the students had a 2.1 to a 3.0 GPA. 80% of the students had a 3.1 to a 4.0 GPA. Within the evangelical Protestant denomination, there was 13.1% of students that were unsure of their GPA or didn't want to share. 13.1% of students that had a 2.1 to a 3.0 GPA, and 73.8% of students who had a 3.1 to a 4.0 GPA. So, as you can see, within both denominations, they have pretty similar GPAs. I took the average GPA ranges of both denominations and compared the minimum and maximum values. You can see in the minimum values that both denominations fall just around the 3.0 line. For the maximum values, both denominations fall just below the 4.0 line, showing that there is similarity in the GPA ranges of both denominations, showing that there might not be much of a difference amongst this academic success. Next, I asked students if they have achieved goals that they have set for themselves thus far in their academic career. I did this because academic success is not only valued by GPA, but also achievement of personal goals that a student sets for themselves. So, you can see the evangelical Protestants, 6% said that they did not achieve academic goals. 94% said that they have achieved academic goals. For the Catholics, 10% said that they have not achieved, and 90% said that they have achieved. So a similar trend here as with the past graphs, that there isn't much of a difference amongst the academic success between the two denominations. Next, I asked the strength of belief in one's own denomination amongst the evangelicals and the Catholics. So here you can see that the strongest belief was 10, and it was also the most chosen for evangelical Protestants, whereas Catholics fell more in the 8 to 9 range. Next, for the interviews, I have qualitative data. So I went away from the numbers and I went more to the actual beliefs that the individuals hold. So for my interview version A, which was the high school students, you could see that all of them plan to go to a secular institution, so a non-religious institution. However, you can also see that only the Jehovah's Witness high school student says that they're aware of a negative stigma within their denomination around secular higher education. For interview B, which is the post-college age, every single interviewee had attended a post-secondary secular institution. But you can also see here that the evangelical Protestant interviewee had religion play a role in their decision to attend college, but he is the only one that is not Jehovah's Witness that also felt that their religion played a role in their decision to attend college. So you can see within the Jehovah's Witnesses that their religion played a stronger role in impacting their decision to go to a secular institution. So lastly, what does this mean? I found that there was no correlation, that 100% of all the respondents had positive self-efficacy and a growth mindset, meaning their propensity to achieve high academically was the same. I also found that there was hardly any difference in the GPA ranges between the denominations, and each interviewee has plans to or has already attended a secular post-secondary educational institution. So, what are important things to notice? Both the Jehovah's Witnesses considered religion when going to a secular institution. Again, like I said, this can show that they might have more of an argument in their mind if they should go because of religious reasons. Also, there was a negative stigma around secular education in the Jehovah's Witness denomination. And lastly, there was a reluctance from the Jehovah's Witnesses to take the survey, meaning that they feel more closed off, and this could be due to being a smaller population, to answering questions about their faith and their personal values. So, for further studies, it can be looked into why are they so closed off. The implications of this is that religion may influence an individual to not attend a post-secondary institution. As you can see, if the Jehovah's Witnesses considered it in making their decision, then possibly they can choose not to go because of their religion. Further research in the Jehovah's Witnesses denomination now has a foundation and proof of need. Because I have showed that there is a lack of response from the Jehovah's Witness denomination when it comes to studies, it shows that they need to be studied, because what is impacting them that they aren't aware of? Why are they so closed off to the general public? What have we done that has made them feel like such distaste for letting people into their personal values? And last, membership in specific Christian denominations does not help nor hinder academic success. So like I said, there is no correlation. The limitations of this research is that there was a small sample size. There's also a lack of Jehovah's Witness denomination respondents. So that means that my research cannot be used to talk about the overall denominations themselves, but can be used as a basis for further research. This data was mostly reflective of individuals from the southeastern United States, so it cannot be used as a full global or even continental study. And that is all I have for you today. Thank you.
All right, good. So I have 3 questions for you. The first question is, how did the choices you made when designing or implementing your research method impact your research process?
They did greatly. So at first, I wasn't even going to conduct interviews. I was just going to do the surveys. But because I had such a strict criteria of who could answer them, I wasn't getting a lot of responses. Additionally, because the Jehovah's Witnesses were so closed off to answering my phone calls and taking the survey, I had to find a supplemental method to get information on them. And so I knew personally a person who is a Jehovah's Witness, and I had another connection, and so I knew that I could talk to them one-on-one to find some piece of data. And so the decisions I made when choosing my method greatly impacted my results in the process. Past that.
All right, second question. What are the real-world implications or consequences related to your findings?
So the real-world implications are that individuals are not swayed one way or another from my findings because of their religion, at least for the Catholics and evangelical Protestants. It is shown, however, that the Jehovah's Witnesses may feel more lenience to not go to a secular institution, so that there is perhaps a impact of religion and denomination on academic achievement or even attending academic institutions, but I have not found that conclusively yet.
Okay, and last question, if you could revisit your research process, how would you do it differently and why?
If I could revisit my research process, I was actually talking with my manager at my job, and I was sharing with the interviews that for one of the interviewees, for all of them, I had asked the question that the Jehovah's Witness website shares that they believe that post-secondary institutions can provide a moral and spiritual danger. But because I used the word Jehovah's Witness and I shared that that's where I got that quote from, one of my interviewees said, I don't agree with Jehovah's Witnesses because they're not real Christians. So he didn't even look at the context of what I was talking about, but rather just the denomination of which it came from. So perhaps if I had taken into account my interviewees, my audience's biases more so when I was creating the questions, then I could have more conclusive results.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.